What's going on? Welcome to ICM Radio. Maybe
I was
ICM Radio.
I was really excited for you there to say welcome to episode number two. After our first recording was in January.
Well,
Welcome to
technically,
episode two of the ICM podcast.
technically, I think this is episode number one, Mark one, shall we say? Because the first one
Mm.
was about 3 years ago. But we'll use this as the first proper episode of ICM, the ICM podcast. We thought
And this
we'd
is now with the ICM. ICM's been launched. We are
yeah,
what we now? We are what 15th of November. We are 7.5 months
seven
into
and
the
a half
ICM being
months.
launched.
Yeah, so
We have
we did have this we did have the first one pre-launch on the Pro Coach channel, but I think we wanted to bring some more tailored content, educational content, both audio and video to the ICM channel and make it its own thing. So
Mhm.
we're going to go through I don't know if anyone listening was a previous listener to the Muscle Mentors podcast, but that was where we kind of brought around on that wavelength the educational content start, and we're going to go back to bringing you similar kind of layout of educational content, but for physique coaching and physique based outcomes for PTs and physique coaches, and pretty much the bread and butter of what we do on the ICM. So you're going to get snapshots and little snippets of the content that we're uploading on there, and a lot of value along the way, and some banter and probably some makeshift podcast setup that might break halfway through, or maybe my chair will fall apart because I've just built it. But we'll see that as we move through.
There are going to be some pauses in this when something inevitably goes wrong.
100%. Yeah.
I've also just realised your incredible background with posters, with plant shots. You've got Olympians, and I
And
have a
Alex
plant.
has got a
So
plant
mine
pot.
is I've got a
Is that
fake plant that's actually got dust on it. So
is
this
that
is
even a real plant?
no, no. That is
It's a
that came
fake
with our
plant.
house in Sydney. So if it's fake, I can't kill
Uh,
it, and I haven't got to water it. So it's going to be it's so much easier that way. I love how you managed to get your truck into your background as well. That's the most
Yeah, I don't
important
know if you
part.
can see that, but it is
To get
parked on the driveway as well. I've actually just bought a
looks incredible.
Tesla. I just bought a Tesla as a secondary company car that we probably don't even need, but it's yeah, that's an interesting experience driving a Tesla as well.
Yeah, that's where we'll get Mr. James Gibson on here. We'll let him give his review of
Yeah,
whether or not it was a required company car,
The only
because I
thing I
think we
can
all know
tell
the
you,
answer to that.
the only thing I could tell you about a Tesla is the word whiplash, because I've never, well, after driving a truck for almost a year that does 0 to 60 in about 35 seconds. Having a Tesla that literally defies the laws of gravity is quite an experience.
I can't imagine you fitting in a Tesla
It's
as
actually
well.
really is we got the Model Y. It's actually really spacious.
Ah, it's because that's when you boys talk about go-karting for the Pro Coach Christmas party. That was my first thought. Was like, you have got no chance.
Yeah,
You
the
don't
go
even fit
karts
in an
probably
office
won't.
chair
No,
or
no,
a
no,
desk
no.
chair, so you got no chance fitting in a go-kart.
Yeah, you are
Um,
right there. You are right. But we basically
is
wanted
it?
a car that would fit a baby pram that is safe. It's not like a 700 horsepower Porsche that Hannah's going to crash inevitably at some point because she's already crashed every car we bought. Um, so we basically thought, right, what's as smooth as possible, that's tax efficient, that is sensible, and yeah, we got that. We got that.
So picturing or you mentioning Han driving a Porsche still reminds me. This is not education at all, but hopefully people are going to enjoy the first few minutes of this.
Random,
Still reminds me
random.
that I still think back to that story that you told when it was I think you were living where you are now, and Han was out and about somewhere. You taking the dogs on a dog walk, and you're walking back along the road, and this when you had the red Porsche, and you saw red Porsche coming towards you down the road. Ah, sweet, Han's on the way back, and you just
Oh
walked
yeah,
middle of the road, dog in each hand.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, dog on each hand on a lead. Just walked straight down the middle of the road, and the closer you got, you were like,
Not
that's
Han.
not our number plate. And it's just a random like middle-aged woman just driving along this absolute like behemoth with
Yeah.
two little teeny little dogs walking towards her. You just had to awkwardly just walk,
She
just
was
walk onto
she
the
was
pavement and
she
be
was
like,
petrified, bless her. She was petrified.
Just one of those moments where you're like, ah, I can't get that back, and that's probably one of our neighbours. Sorry in advance.
Yeah, that was not a good experience. That, but we live and we learn. We live and we learn. That's how bad my eyesight is from looking at a screen for the last 11 years of my life.
So yeah, so good luck coaching. Good luck coaches, I should say. Who've got the
Yeah,
same thing to look forward to.
yeah,
But we're about to, as you said, we are going to educate people. I'm looking forward to this, mate, as well. It's going to be good to go through bits and bobs. And we're starting with what's probably one of the most important topics that we can actually go through within coaching, and actually really interesting subsections of that as well. So the first podcast today, and potentially the first couple of podcasts we're going to go through, are going to be transformation based, and essentially all the things that you need to know from a coaching aspect to make the quality of your transformations as high as possible, but also be able to do them and get them consistently as well. Because obviously you and I both have backgrounds working at gyms that are known for transformations, and
yeah,
it's your currency as a coach, isn't it? Like if you're one of those people that can get results, who can change people's lives and change people's physiques and do all the various different incredible things that brings, you're always going to be successful. And this is the foundation of what we do. And so we're going to be starting from the ground up today in terms of the first bits that you need to know. But I think for any coaches out there who are struggling with results, or don't know the next steps to take, or even are doing damn well but want to make sure they keep them doing damn well, this is exactly where to start.
yeah. 100%, 100%. So I think we presented this before in terms of looking at like a concept of a long-term client timeline, and that I'd say pretty much the lifespan of a coach the lifespan of a client in terms of coaching, whether it's someone that's been with you for a year or just someone that's coming to you to work that is inevitably goal orientated, and it's looking at right the process that you're going to go through in that transformation and obviously everything thereafter. You can pretty much wrap all of that up into this concept. But I think the first thing we'll talk about in this episode will be, and I think we'll both agree, the main reason why most of those transformations will fail, at least on the first attempt, is that initial setup phase and that initial kind of priming phase into that coaching process.
Yeah, absolutely. And this should be the start of a new client's coaching journey as well.
Mm.
So this is also like it handily crosses over to other things where if you get this right with people, you're improving your chances of getting a better result, but also you're giving a client a completely different experience at the same time. You're able to put things into place that they have potentially struggled with for an extended period of time, as we'll go into things like sleep and stress, but also you're going to get more from what you want to get out of that person at the same time. So it's very much a double win.
Yeah, I think that, like, especially when I was PTing, one of the biggest things was understanding the first, the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of coaching. And this, to be fair, it's been an interesting topic for you to discuss as well when you're at UP, because I imagine there's probably quite a time pressured situation for results there. But you try and drill in at the start, especially when we're at M10 in that initial stage of coaching. Like the first 4 weeks, you're not really going to see a lot of tangible change there, besides just that initial wake up of response. And a lot of it's habit building, a lot of it's mindset building, a lot of it's just priming them to get into the business end of the phase where most of the change is done. And if you get someone that comes to you and they've got poor lifestyle, they've got poor sleep, they're inflamed, they've got a poor dietary habits, they're under eating or overeating, the initial response is just tidying all that up, and you are going to get visual change. You are going to get a drop in inflammation. You are going to get a leaner, resemble of a look in that time frame, but it's not going to be massive results. And I think managing that psychology of them expecting the world to change in the first week or first couple of weeks, that can only come by making them look at the bigger picture and making them look at the whole process, as opposed to change like comes immediately. Like, you've got to sit them down and go through, right, this is what we're going to focus on for the first 4 weeks or 8 weeks, then we're going to move into a phase that focuses on this, and we're going to do that, and then after that we're going to start your fat loss phase with the mindset of finishing at this date. And that ability to be kind of process orientated and have a timeline is massively influential there in terms of keeping them bought in and just building that buy-in at the start.
Because if you get that buy-in, you're laughing to a
Yeah,
certain
yeah,
extent. Because that's actually where it's really interesting because my experience at UP was actually very different to that in the sense of what you mentioned about not necessarily seeing as much visible change coming through and not almost like telling the client that's going to be the case, they're not getting disheartened and things over the first few weeks. We actually went a very, very different route with that, where the biggest thing that we were looking for was buy-in and adherence to people straight away.
yeah, yeah,
And almost as quickly as possible, showing them enough change that they then trust you as their coach and they trust in what they're doing. So that then as they go through with things and as they get to kind of later weeks and things are starting to get more difficult and all these challenges are coming up, they're like, actually, I know what I need to be doing here. I trust Al or I trust whoever it might be that's coaching me. I'm just going to essentially continue moving with this. And we actually had a couple of things that we intentionally put in so we could almost force the issue with that a little bit as well. Like we would, for example, like we start with food quite low. We start with carbohydrate intake being quite low because we would have clients coming to us who were 30s, 40s, out of shape, haven't trained for a while, and had a lot of things that probably would have been wrong with them now looking back, that a
yeah,
better approach would have been to fix them. But in that instance, it was much more a case of, right, if we push this person hard for, say, the first 1 or 2 weeks, we could take 6, 7, 8 pounds off them.
yeah,
And then it's almost like starting to backtrack a little bit and then starting to bring those bits up where those areas that longer term are going to start to affect them. Let's see if we can get these into better place now once we've got that buy-in in the first place.
yeah, yeah.
Which in some instances is a good thing. I don't think in the majority of cases, majority of clients, it is a good approach because you do just burn people pretty quick.
You've got to know when to draw the line in terms of right, when do we kind of consolidate it, I guess.
Yeah, 100%.
But
Because if you
also,
don't, like
yeah,
you
go
you
on.
almost you almost like delay that difficult conversation because the problem you have is that if you have someone not eating a huge amount of food and they're eating 50 grams of carbs a day, but they've dropped all this weight, yes, you've got them buying into you, but you've reinforced that idea that, oh, this is the only way that I can lose weight now.
Yeah,
And then if you try and add food back in, it's a really hard thing to do.
yeah,
However well
yeah,
you have that conversation, because they've automatically seen, oh, if I look how much weight I can drop, look how much I can change. Like I feel so much better because
yeah,
in such a short space of time. Then
yeah,
if you say, oh, we're going to add in 200 grams of carbs a day because you need to actually function as a human being and you need to be able to train, etc., etc., they're always going to have that little voice in the back of the head being like, yeah, but we're going to slow down a little bit now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's just picking the time for that, but it's also just taking principles from it and
Exactly. Yeah.
create
I
that
think
buy-in.
the interesting thing with UP, I think, would have been because it was city based in London, you're going to have a lot of working professionals, businessmen, businesswomen that are very kind of like numbers driven or like very results driven, very progress driven in terms of where they are professionally within their lives. They're constantly looking for the next bonus or the next promotion or whatever it might be, the next deal that you will probably lose buy-in from those individuals really quickly if they're not seeing tangible change early on.
Mm.
So I'd imagine, especially in that demographic, it's especially with those kind of individuals, it's gonna like if you've got like a 50-year-old CEO of a company who's a multimillionaire that's coming to you for PT for 150 quid an hour 4 times a week. And it's obviously like the extreme in terms of an example, but like he's expecting results like that because he's got people in his company that are driven on KPIs and have got performance goals. So you'd expect the same kind of relationship with a PT. So I think the buy-in for him would be right. I'm 2 weeks in and I'm 14 pounds down. This is great. I suddenly trust the coach now. I've got buy-in, and then you can probably have more autonomy there over the decisions you're making as well.
Absolutely. Because it's you mentioned before, like the pressure side of things with a shorter term result and having to do things essentially at hyperspeed, and it's always
Mm,
true.
yeah, yeah.
And you know what's really interesting is I remember in the past, and even like hearing this in the grapevine, hearing this from different people, like there's been people speaking about shorter term transformation is actually a bad thing,
Mm,
and like pushing people is a bad thing. And I'll be honest, I've been through a stage where having known I pushed people too hard, almost kind of sitting back the opposite way and being like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, but then going too much the opposite side. And again, it's the same thing. It's just situational. There'll always be people that want fast change. There will always be people that respond best to that. It's just understanding when you want to do it. There's not a good or a bad approach to this stuff. It's just, right, who is this person that's in front of me? What are they going to respond best to? And then how am I going to set up their coaching, their journey, the next 6 months of their life to reflect that? Because
Yeah.
again, if you have that same 50-year-old CEO and you tell him about how everything's going to be sustainable and how everything's going to be slow, he's going to be like, no, thanks. Like that's
Yeah.
the most boring thing in the entire world. But
Yeah.
then you're not going to take 62-year-old Doris who likes going out for afternoon tea on a Sunday and be like,
We're starting on
have
GVT,
you
love.
heard? Oh, imagine
What have we got today? We've
Or
actually got RDL and the squat pattern 10 times 10.
oh God. Screaming at her going down the track and just being like, Doris, come on. Just like there behind her pushing her and being like,
When
right,
when
let's
when
get to
when do we
work.
when do we rest? Alex is like, actually, you're going to push that sled in between your rest periods.
Don't worry,
Then you're going
Doris,
to,
you can rest when you're dead. And that
yeah.
could be quite soon at this
We
rate.
we used to
We're
have this
accelerating you
we
towards
used to
that.
have this rule called if there's any client that was like particularly like if they're in a really time pressured situation and you knew they had to change quickly, or they were just like really overweight and they had a lot of body fat to lose. We used to have this rule that was like keep the ball in play. So we'd load up like either the sled drag where you've got the harness and you walk with it, or the put like just pushing a sled that's light. And there'd be two astroturfs, and there'd be one at either end. And whenever you had a rest period, you'd essentially just get them to just walk 25 yards up and down, just do a 50-yard thing in the rest period, then go back to the exercise. So for like, if it was like, say, for example, with a typical PT session, if it was like 60 minutes, you had a 5 minute sit down or a 5 minute warm up. All right, that's 10 minutes of the session gone. You might be chatting for 5 minutes in that time frame as well. So you got 45 minutes to play with. That 45 minutes there was like at no point in that workout. They were either on a machine doing an exercise or they were walking down the AstroTurf. So they have 45 minutes of constant output there. And especially for people that are office based or people that just don't move, and you're setting them a step target of 8,000 steps, and they're like, oh, I'm really struggling because I'm just sat at a desk all day. Like, you don't really have a choice. If that's an hour that they can get movement in, then you've got to make the most of the time frame you've got.
Mm, mm. Again, ours would be similar too. It would be typically GBC, so German body composition. So
Yeah.
you're pairing upper lower movements, and then you've got a hip finisher or something at the end where it's like, how much can I just torch this person in 10 minutes?
Mm.
And it's a sled drag, it's a prowler push, it's a dead mill sprint. We had a Windgate, I think it is, bike.
Yeah, that's gonna make you throw up quick.
Yeah, yeah, and that was the aim within session one, basically. Right, give this person the
Doing upper lower
experience of
supersets
it.
and finishing with Wingate sprints.
Oh, it was. I'm not gonna lie. There's that sadistic side to it, was like, this is the most fun ever, especially when you got a good client. Like
Yeah.
they were the ones where, like, say you get a dude comes in and he's got a bit of ego to him,
Mm.
and you can almost play in it a little bit, and you can just absolutely just terrorize him for an hour 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And if you're, I don't know, you've had a bad day at home or you're dieting and you're a bit angry, you're like, this one's getting it today.
Yeah.
Like he's crawling up those stairs.
He's gonna be crawling out the gym. Yeah. Yeah.
And now
Brilliant.
look at us both sitting in comfy chairs all
Yeah, I
day.
know. The irony. The irony.
How times have changed.
I know.
You just, I thought that was it. I thought you was going to screen share onto yourself there.
Have you got that?
Yeah, mate. That's all good.
Am I too close or am I all right?
I think you should be all good. We can see all the words. You're not covering anything. You're not that
Sweet.
big, mate. Don't worry.
No, I used to be, but not
Still,
now.
you're still on TRT. So
I
you
used to be. Right. So we'll use that as an example of like this ideal longer term physique model where basically at the start, whether you have an 8 week or a 16 week or a 20 week, whatever it might be, if there's no deadline over a goal, then you're kind of making up those dates as you go along based on where you see fit and how quickly this client's changing. But 9 times out of 10, when you're getting someone on board, if it's physique based outcomes and it's not like a competitor in terms of getting on stage, or it's specifically a photo shoot prep, you've got X amount of weeks or months before that date, and then you're basically just timelining, right, how many weeks have I actually got to dedicate to specific outcomes in this process? Is it going to be that if they got a photo shoot in 16 weeks and we pretty much have to start fat loss from the get-go? Have we got a photo shoot in 30 weeks, and I can maybe have a little bit of time putting some more lean muscle on their frame before they start that process. 9 times out of 10 for a lot of clients that are coming to you, the biggest thing is, we've all been there where you get a female client coming to you and they're like, oh, this is my ideal physique that I want to look at, and it's some fitness model on Instagram that's probably edited the photos, or it's somebody in a magazine that's like, hourglass physique, massive glutes, tiny waist, huge wide hips, so they're kind of mass around the hips and thigh are huge. Whether that's possible or not relative to their structure and relative to their genetics, and if maybe that individual's enhanced as well. The biggest thing is a lot of those situations, clients need to understand it's just having more muscle mass on your frame that will give you that shape. It's not just going through a fat loss process. If you've got no tissue and you go through a fat loss process, you're probably going to look even worse than you did when you started, because you're going to have no shape whatsoever. You're going to be leaner, yeah, but then you'd start that process of putting more muscle on. But the biggest thing we're going to go through today is just understanding that this point, whether it's Al going through an 8-week transformation, a really intensive phase where he almost has to do this on the go, or whether it's you with a client that just says, I've got a wedding next November and we've got a year's worth of time, that process can be stretched out a little bit, but it's all relative to your circumstances. But this is the point where you either fall at the first hurdle, and a transformation or a result, or maybe just a client relationship in the first place starts to slowly kind of dwindle out over time, or you can build really solid foundations which leads to inevitable results there. And just view it as this kind of continuum here. And this is something that, even if you had a really short-term goal, even if you had a really short-term goal, and they said, look, I've got holiday in 8 weeks, or I've got a wedding in 8 weeks, or I've got a photo shoot in 8 weeks, I need your help. Like, if they come to you in that consultation and they're in a really, really poor position, and they're just, everything is on red there in terms of low readiness to change, that's then your responsibility to kind of give them the lay of the land there, in terms of like, this is not realistic relative to the situation you're in, or maybe your expectations of what you can achieve in this time frame are not realistic. We've all had it where clients come to you at, like, they're super, super out of shape, super inflamed, they've got terrible lifestyle habits, and they say, look, I want to have a six-pack for my holiday in 8 weeks. And you're like, dude, it's going to take you 8 weeks to lose a quarter of that before you even get lean. But that's just expectation management. But this here is just really how you set the tone to start with. Are they going to be, like Alex mentioned before, in terms of, whether you're 30s to 50s, they're a professional in terms of they've got a professional orientated job, whether it's corporate or anything else, but they're disciplined, they're self-motivated because they're there in the first place, they're bought in because they're paying you X amount for coaching. They've got the time in their lifestyle to dedicate to the goal. Like, they're in a position where most of the stuff is going to be green there. Even if the sleep's poor, even if the diet's bad, they're ready to change, and they're ready to change all those habits. Some of those situations are going to be in the red, and that's just where we need to manage things. But for us, really, the biggest thing comes from these 8 variables there, and like the foundations of a transformation will go through these 8 things. And if we can box off 8 variables there in the first, whether it's a couple of weeks of coaching or a couple of months of coaching in a longer term process, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to have a good result by the end of the time that you're working with that client. Whereas if you miss these boxes and you compromise those boxes and you leave them in a position where they haven't been fulfilled or managed, that's where things will start to crumble the longer you go through that process there.
Mm.
Do you want to go through, like, just start with some, like, we'll just start with the first bit and then just go through each one and just have a little bit of a breakdown of each?
Yeah, absolutely. So mindset and motivations, I think, a fascinating one, because I think this is actually the most important one, but equally, it's probably the one that people don't think about quite so much. Like, I'd imagine people that listen to this so far, like, when we talk about creating that foundation, people are probably thinking predominantly about sleep, stress, training, like the bigger pieces, and sometimes like the sexier pieces, the puzzle here. Whereas this is actually the stuff that underpins everything.
Mm,
Because if we're talking about a new client, there's always going to be a reason that that person's reached out in the first place. Like, there's going to be a goal in their head, and they're going to be like, right, as you said before, there could be a time frame of a photo shoot that got booked or a holiday going on, or it could just be a case of they were running around with the kids in the garden and my 3-year-old was running rings around me and I was exhausted and I need to make a change about this now, whatever it might be. That's always going to be there in the background. And I think it's on us as coaches that actually understand exactly what that is. Because if we can get to the bottom of that real reason, we can find their true purpose behind wanting to make this a change, that then sets up everything else that follows. Because say, for example, again, let's use that person's example where someone wants to lose 10 kilos because they want to be able to do more things with their children. If we just have that person come into us and the person says, oh, I want to lose 10 kilos, so I want to feel a little bit better, it's not a particularly strong thing to actually go with. And when we start to move through coaching and we start to get to times where things begin to get a bit more difficult, because it hasn't got a huge amount of weight behind it, the person's not actually going to stick to what they wanted to do. They're not going to be completely derailed, but they're not going to be doing everything that they need to be doing, especially with the same meticulous detail that they would have inevitably used towards the start. But again, if we've been able to get this stuff properly assessed and properly understood in our heads and the client's head as well, that's going to carry them a hell of a lot further down the line. And this all starts probably before coaching has even started itself. And so they've come to you for a reason, but understanding this starts with, right, in your consultation, what questions are you asking? How comfortable are you actually going quite deep into these conversations rather than it just being done at face value? And if you're not comfortable kind of digging into things a little bit more, you're never going to fully understand this stuff. And it's always going to hold you back as you go further on down the line. A little tactic that I will use with people is, and this is much easier for any PTs watching and listening. It's much easier for you guys to do this when you're in person as opposed to being on a Zoom call or even on message, whatever it might be. But if you sit down in conversation with someone, go through goal setting, go through the usual questions that you'd ask, but just almost be like a 6-year-old where you're asking why, and you're just allowing that, basically giving the hand on the floor and be like, right, go into this now a little bit more for me. Because if you're able to do that and the person is willing to speak through it, they're going to give you so much. And as I said, that then sets you up. So you're like, right, I'm going to make a note of that. I know the true reason that you are here. Great. This is now what we're going to use as we get into week 6, week 7, week 8, whatever it might be down the line. And as I said, for me, this is the foundation of coaching. This is step 1. And if you can nail this, then said everything else is naturally gonna fall into place afterwards as well. So I think that's it. This is where, with the majority of clients that come to us, if we get this right, you're sorted. Because again, the majority of coaches watching this, they're going to be working with normal people. We're going to be looking at Gen Pop clients. If we can get a Gen Pop client to be consistent and adhere to things and just do what they need to be doing, we can actually get a pretty damn good change out of them just in that. But I said, for me, this actually comes from step number 1. Get that person mentally in the right place, and then everything else just follows through afterwards.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I would say there is just like, you are finding that anchor at the start as well, like finding the anchor to basically leverage through when the process gets harder. If you know that underlying meaning of why they're there and what they're doing and what they're doing it for, you can really leverage that when the process gets a lot harder and they start to get challenged, whether it's adherence or whether it's fatigue in a fat loss phase, whether it's them, turning up and they're absolutely knackered. Like you've got that in your back pocket of like, I know why you're here and I know the bigger reason. So whether that's as personal, sometimes it gets as personal as things that once you've built enough rapport, they start to open up a lot deeper on a deeper level. Like I've had times when I used to PT where sometimes there'd be clients that come in and we wouldn't even train on the gym floor. It would be a 60-minute chat in the consultation room because they're going through something or because something's happened and they're not in the right frame of mind to train. But I know that with that conversation, I know that them going out, out of that door on a Friday, I know that they're going to be locked in for the entire weekend now, as opposed to going and just letting loose and slipping away in terms of adherence. So finding that anchor is hugely important. Like not all clients in that situation. Like if you look at someone that's doing a transformation, or if you look at someone doing a contest prep, their anchor is time orientated, and it's very easy to execute because you know exactly how long you've got until that time frame. You've got that carrot dangled in front of your head. If you've got someone that comes to you and they say, I want to change my quality of life and I want to lose 50 pounds. I want to lose, even if it's not numerical, I just want to get in shape. I want to get in the best shape of my life. And they've got a long way to go. Like unless you can quantify that and really dig deep into the why, there's no there's no kind of tangible that you can play on there. So I think one of those, the initial consultation there is finding that anchor and using that to your advantage over the course of time as well.
Because most people that come to us have probably tried to achieve this goal before.
Exactly. Yeah.
And part of the reason they haven't been able to do it is because of this. They've just had something that they've wanted to achieve because everyone wants to lose a bit of weight. Everyone wants to be either bigger or leaner, whatever it might be. There's always gonna be that thought in your head, but if you haven't actually got any strength behind it, it's just words.
Yeah.
But it takes a bit of thinking. And you know when I actually realized how important this is was over the last few years, because if I think back to me at the start of my career, terrible at this. Like that tactic of sitting there in a consultation room and almost like letting silence hang for a couple of seconds, hated it. I was so bad at it. And I'd always almost like jump in and be like, oh, I need to say something here because
Take back control. Yeah.
awkward. Yeah. It was so bad. But as soon as I started to like, actually, no, this is holding things back and start to get better at it.
Yeah.
Oh, and it made things easier.
Yeah. Habit optimization is just the ability to be process orientated outside of the time that they're with you. It's like you just view that as, from a client transformation standpoint, the hour that they've got with you, however many times a week, is not really the variable that you need to manage closely, because you're in complete control of what they do in that time frame that they're with you. But the biggest thing in getting world-class results is, how are we managing and setting boundaries and setting expectations and setting certain ground rules over the other 23 hours in the day, the other 4 or 5 days a week that they're not seeing you. Even if they're seeing you, 4 sessions of 1 hour a week, which, if it was somebody that's highly motivated, they're probably going to do 3, aren't they? If this is an online client, what are they doing outside the check-in day? What are they doing outside of you speaking to them one-to-one on the check-in? The biggest thing there is just setting habits and setting them up for success in terms of, right, whether that's a morning routine to be locked in, whether that's certain KPIs to hit across the day, like water target, meals, step goal, training schedule, cardio, whatever, expenditure goals, whether that's an evening routine to optimize their sleep. Like a lot of those situations with people that are coming in for physique transformations, whether it's advanced or Gen Pop, the reason why they're in the situation they're in is because they've got poor habits, because they're probably not that motivated previously, and now they've bought into a process that they are, but the habits are still poor. And that's one thing we've got to take full control of, and just give them targets to hit, because it's a lot easier for you to be motivated when you've got something down on paper that you can just start ticking off, than if you left to your own accord. You need to have full control there over what's expected for each check-in, and make sure each one's boxed off at one at a time.
And it's quite simple to actually bring that in a lot of cases, because all you need to do to start with is just go through and assess a handful, so kind of maybe 3, 4, 5 areas that are particularly bad, and just bring in small things to improve them. Like, for example, with a typical consultation format, there'll normally be some pretty hefty red flags in there, because if there weren't, then this person wouldn't be reaching out in the first place. Like, say if someone is like, training is not bad, and a lot of people that'll be the case, because normally training is okay for people. So we can improve it, but it's not as bad as some other things. But someone's getting 3 hours of sleep a night and they're waking up numerous times. We kind of look at that and be like, right, that's one of these early things that we need to be improving, because that's in a damn bad place. Like, we need to fix that. And then we're going to go, right, what can we actually do to help improve it? Perfect. That's the start of someone's list. And if we get a small number of things in there to start with, first couple of weeks, right, let's get these simple bits being ticked off. It could be a caffeine curfew. It could be a time to start winding down. It could be some people like what time you finish work, etc. Get those nailed over the first couple of weeks. Right, what can we then add into that? And you can actually build up these habits quite quickly without the person really noticing. You're not giving them 10 different things to do within week 1 and being like, right, massively overload them with a load of different things. But you can actually get a huge amount of change here through simply just making them aware of it.
Yeah, 100%. Support system and environment, I think, is something that's a little bit more multifaceted, because you become that support system, but their environment is also outside of your remit as well. Like, the environment is out of the gym that they're coaching, and the environment is out of the coaching process online. The environment for them is the other people in their lives and the other environments in their lives, whether it's work or family or friends, whatever it might be. And those also coincided with one another, that's where there's going to be potential jeopardizing things to success within that process. So I think that support system, you become the kind of main one there in terms of the support system. That's your role, but it's also making them aware of the environment they're in and how that has an influence on the goal. I think most of the situations that I've been in for transformations, the environment's either been work related because of the stress from work leading to certain habits that are not ideal for the goal, or it's going to be friendship circles or certain individuals that have an influence on them that again leads to pretty suboptimal habits for the goal. Whether that's like meals out, alcohol, drinking, nights out, whether that's work related stress, which is leading to certain stress triggers, which might lead to comfort eating or emotional eating or whatever it might be. Those are probably the most typical ones there in terms of what we'd see.
Yeah, and obviously we're not gonna tell people to get a divorce during the first couple of weeks. Like,
Depends how bad it
sorry,
is.
your partner, they don't support this. They're not a very good cook, so that is the end. But it's more. I think it's more just, as you said, kind of understanding what is around them. What can you influence? Okay, we can improve this, make it easier, and that's sometimes all that you need to do with people. Um, well, I think I agree. Work is probably one of the biggest ones, people, because work actually brings a lot of things with it. Like, it
Yeah.
could be like you bring your own lunch into work for the first time because you prepared some food, and I don't know, from Doris from next door says a little something to you and like has a little comment because you're not going out for lunch and little things like that. Like, if you can avoid those situations as much as possible and those things that eat away, then it makes things a lot easier for the person.
Yeah. 100%.
And then sleep quality and stress management. Now, this is, I mentioned before that a lot of the time people training will be in a good place. These are two other very, very good examples of things that will not. I actually think if people put as much time and effort into getting a good night's sleep and actually keeping themselves relaxed as they did into what they do in the gym, God, our jobs would be so much easier, wouldn't they? It'd be a piece of cake because people would actually be able to recover from things and feel good through the day. But these are, again, really common things that we're going to need to probably sort out from the outset, because I firmly believe that majority of people don't actually sleep very well at all, and they don't realize how important sleep is until they either get a very good night's sleep or they get a very bad night's sleep, and they're suddenly like, oh, this is how I should feel or how I should not feel each day. Majority of people have very bad sleep hygiene, so when we look at kind of how they're spending their evenings, when we look at what they're doing kind of in that maybe 1 or 2 hours before they're actually trying to go to sleep, it's normally going to be quite poor. We've got as Cal sips his monster, we've got a reliance on caffeine. A lot of people through the day to get through the day. It's what is it? 10:30, mate, you're fine. AM. We have that for a lot of people to kind of get in through a day, but these are the kind of things that add up, where if we have a client where we're wanting to make a physical change and we are pushing someone's physique and we're pushing someone's body in the gym and creating more stress for them, if we haven't got a handle of this stuff, that body's gonna be fighting back against us for pretty much the entire time.
Yeah.
And we just get to the point where we've dug them a hole that they can't get back out of. So if we correct this now from the outset and we get this to the point where it's actually going to be able to support training over the weeks and months that follow, man, again, our jobs get so much easier. And I think it's one of those ones, give it a handful of weeks of getting this improved and perfect, someone's going to feel tons better, and you've got this massive ceiling that you can now push up into in terms of what they're doing in the gym.
Yeah. And I think that is like start with bite-sized tasks that they can manage and then just build it over time. Like, I think if you go onto the ICM sleep section, you go on to the layers of that and how complex that can be, and you start looking at aura rings, you start looking at sleep analysis, you start looking at numbers there in terms of the sleep cycles and what each phase of the sleep cycle does in terms of the impacts on the brain and human function and performance and recovery. Like, we can go really deep there, but deep too quick. And I think from a sleep analysis standpoint, start with the bigger picture. Start with this, like, set your alarm for, try and get to bed at this time. If you're going to wake up at this time, I want you to try and set that evening routine for this time and be in bed for this time. So we've got an increase in the amount of time available to sleep in the first place. We've got an improvement in that evening routine, basic things that we can action, screen exposure, blue light, caffeine intake will probably be the biggest ones for most people there. Um, and you're going to see massive changes from that in the first place. And if sleep then stays poor, then we can start to go deeper into the rabbit hole there. But we definitely don't need, for most people, we don't need to completely baffle them at the start, because it might be interesting and look advanced for you, and you might think that gives a good impression at the start, but you're going to alienate a lot of clients if you go too heavy too early on, because they're just not going to understand anything you say.
Same with sleep tracking.
Yeah.
As you actually go through coaching someone, you don't necessarily need to go to the nth degree of the percentage of time they've spent in REM sleep and awake and things like that. Like, I think a lot of time for the majority of people, they know how well they slept from how they've woken up that morning.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you've had a good sleep, you probably know you've had a bad sleep, and that can actually be your data collection sorted. But if you can get someone from that point where they wake up exhausted in the morning and they can't function for the first 2 hours, to actually waking up and be like, oh, I feel I'm good here. Perfect.
Yeah.
And that actually fits in really nicely with what we said before about buy-in as well. Like, these are things that sometimes people have been in a bad place for an extended period of time. Again, if you've got your typical person who for the last 10 years hasn't been able to sleep well at all, and they always feel terrible in the mornings and energy is always really poor, and then they crash in the afternoon, and you can bring in some strategies to improve this sort of stuff and get some serious return on that in the first few weeks, that person's gonna be like, oh God, this guy knows what he's doing here. This man is he's gonna, if he can do this to my sleep, like, think of everything else he can do.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
But almost like has that carry on to overall coaching as well, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. Definitely. Fifth point: nutritional quality, calorie awareness, and supplementation. Supplementation will be at the bottom of that list, but nutritional quality and calorie awareness, I would say, are biggies there, because most people in those situations are going to come to you pretty inflamed. Are going to come to you with maybe some elements of their diet that have been kind of high quality, high return, but most of it is going to be poor quality, poor return. And I think this also ties in with the approach you're going to take with how you adjust their nutrition to start with. So not just the start point in terms of intake and where energy balance is as a whole in terms of calories in, calories out, to start in terms of how you are going to manage their nutrition in terms of the method that you go down, the route that you go down, whether it's calorie tracking, whether it's a meal plan, whether it's palm size, fist size portion sizes, that you go down that kind of precision nutrition route. You got to pick your tool, you got to pick your method of working in terms of what's going to be most effective for that individual at that time and what they can deal with. And then you've got to slowly start to educate them across that course of time. And I think calorie awareness and an understanding of the caloric value of food and the caloric value of different foods is one of the biggest things for setting clients up for success after the transformation is done, because they've got the toolbox and the awareness of, like, there's no right or wrong here. There's no necessarily good or bad. There's just, if I've got a bank vault and I can only fit so much currency in it, I've got high currency and low currency, and I've got this amount of space, and I can fill it with this amount of food or calorie input. And some of them are really calorie expensive and some of them are pretty efficient there. So what can we get, within our remit if our calorie target is X? So yeah, one of the biggest things, especially for clients that are coming to you absolutely clueless, which you'll be surprised. Like, if it's not a client that's industry based, most of them are going to be completely clueless about nutrition. Just general awareness over just their previous dietary habits, maybe what was going on untracked that they weren't even aware was adding to their total calorie amount, that was having an influence on their goals. Like, typical, like, oh, I get, once a day I go to Starbucks and get this frappuccino, which ends up being 1900 calories or something. They have no idea what it is because they think it's a drink and it doesn't count. Like, little things like that, where it's like a lot of the untracked eating is most of the problem for clients. Or like an awareness over, if you've got, especially for, it would have been really apparent for people that were PTing, but you get this with online coaching as well. If they're in a corporate job and they've got a client entertain and they've got to go out for 2 or 3 meals a week with clients and they've got to socially drink or engage and network, like, if you're doing that 2 or 3 times a week, you're doing that 8 to 12 times a month. Like, it's going to have a monumental impact on their overall energy balance across a week, across a month. So you're going to have to play that into the process as well. And some of those individuals won't be able to stop doing that. They're just going to have to make wiser choices when they're there in the first place. So making them aware of their habits and the impact it has on their goal is huge.
I remember actually a guy who I didn't train at UP, but knew because one of my good friends trained him. And he's the perfect example of this because he had 3 meals out a day, every day. Like he would not cook. And he, not because he refused to, but because he had so many work things going on. And for him, that's where calorie awareness was perfect because it was a case of, right, we can't create the perfect diet for you here because you can't fully control everything that you're eating, but you can still control enough where you can make this a hell of a lot better than what it was before.
Yeah.
And like the steps for him were right, which place are you going to most consistently? Okay, what are your better choices? How are we building that meal up? Like, what are we prioritizing on that plate? And it sounds super simple, but actually, again, for him, it was crazy what it did because rather than going out for meals, and for someone like this, again, he's an extreme example, but he didn't really care about the food that he was eating because the novelty of going out for food wasn't there because it was just his normal life. But for him, it's a case of right, if he was able to actually eat some better quality things, then great. But what I think is interesting with this as well is a client like that, or say, for example, a client who's on a meal plan to start with, where it's almost like a less traditional way of teaching someone about nutrition, you can actually teach them a lot more than what you expect. Like
Mm.
if you have your average client or average person out there who understands a little bit about nutrition, because I think people do know a little bit to a certain extent, but they don't in any sense kind of fully understand what's happening. Like if you give them a meal plan or something along those lines where they can see a plate of food in front of them and they can get an idea of portion size just from what they can physically see, steps like that again go a huge way as well. Because if you think like, say you've got X amount of chicken on a plate, X amount of potato, X amount of vegetables all there together, then they can see it actually in practice. And they might not need to know necessarily exactly what's happening there and then kind of all the different facets to it, but they're still going to be learning a lot. You're still putting them in a situation where they are eating better and they're understanding more about food than what they had there to start with. And as you said, you can then start to build things other bits up as they then go through afterwards.
Yeah.
Um, Again, it's just meeting someone where they're at, I think, with that. Probably as much as with anything else, because if you have a client that wants a short-term result, you can't go super slow with change. You can't take 2 months to slowly get them up to a point where they understand everything. But equally at the same time, you can't just absolutely shotgun someone into a diet straight off the bat because good luck trying to catch up with that a few months down the line.
Yeah.
They might look great for a short period of time, but you've made coaching further on 10 times more difficult for yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
when you used to PT, did you find that nutrition and quality or calorie awareness were the most important routes to go down first?
I think nutritional quality was the start because it brought calorie awareness by default.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of the clients that we were working with, I'd say maybe online would be a little bit different because we were setting, I was setting like I'd use the numbers more for clients like that because it was a slightly more advanced client and they might have had a little bit more awareness over how things work and what things mean. So I could go down the route of calories, macros, etc. pretty quickly. Whereas when I was PTing, especially at M10, and you had very foundational Gen Pop clients that were coming in that were working professionals, but they were just completely clueless over everything. They didn't know what a macro was. They didn't know what, calorie, they didn't know how to quantify how many calories were a gram of this or a gram of that, whatever it might be. Um, Changing food quality and improving food quality was a way, and lowering untracked food as well, and making them aware over that was a way of basically bringing their total calorie yield into sufficient deficit. Like there was an example, I wonder if she'll listen to this. There was an example of a client that I had at M10 called Lynn, and she was like badass boss, business professional, didn't take any shit. Like she like she had a high stakes job, traveled the country, had done it for a long time. Um, and she just basically got to a point where I think a lot of that was probably client entertainment or just stress related for the job. But she liked to wine, she liked meals out. That was her way of de-stressing, and if you do that for 10 years, you're going to have consequences to your body composition, right? Especially when you start to get a little bit older. And she was premenopausal, or she was going through menopause when we were coaching. And I knew that if I started to talk calories, she'd just think it was bullshit. She'd just be like, I don't have time to think about this. Like, I can't sit down on my fitness pal and go through this when I've got all these things to do. Um, And I got that impression very, very quickly. She was just no nonsense. She just wanted, right, what's the quickest way of doing this? What's the most effective and the most efficient way of doing this? So we literally just went down. She was there for a year, but the first 6 months were really where that most of that change happened. We literally went down precision nutrition based portion sizes. So she had 4 meals a day. One of them was a snack. She had 3 main meals. She had a protein sized. We went pretty much zero carb at the start, just veggies, fiber, phytonutrients, fats, proteins, and work protein up over time over different portions. But just had 3 square meals, which were protein and fat based with a big bolus of vegetables. There was a snack that was fruit based once a day, and then she'd have 3 protein sources for the day. And I'd literally just get her to at the end of every day, she'd just take a picture of every meal that she'd eaten for the day, and she'd send that to me at the end of every day. And then when I saw her 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, she had an hour's worth of PT. I don't think she even trained for the first 8 weeks of us coaching together. She didn't train a single day in those 8 weeks because she was pretty intimidated by the gym environment. So we just sat in the assessment room and just chatted and just basically started to ingrain better habits, step target. She got out more. She started doing 10,000 steps, and then you were getting £5, £6, £7, £5, £8, and this weight was just absolutely flying off because these habits were changing. But she was obviously in a deficit relative to before because she stopped drinking, she stopped going out for meals, or she went out for meals, she'd pick a steak, or she'd pick a fillet of fish and vegetables as a side because she knows, right, 3 meals, we can have that, I can have one snack, that's my job done. Don't have to think about calories. She's in a deficit because if you've got someone that come into you and they've got 100 pounds of fat mass to lose on their frame to get down to a comfortable set point, and they're super inflamed and they've got really poor lifestyle, they've got really poor nutritional practices, they're drinking alcohol multiple times a week. If you put them on 4 square meals that are single ingredient foods, high fiber, high nutrient quality, they're going to be in a massive deficit just from that. They don't need to track calories at the start. And she lost 80 pounds in 6 months. 80 pounds in 6 months from not tracking a single calorie. And then when we went through that 6 month process, once she'd lost the weight, I was then, pretty aware of the fact that if I didn't then give her that calorie awareness, it's going to be really hard for her to then maintain that once I'm not there because she's not sending me photos. She's not having that accountability. So once she'd had that period of time, we then looked at, right, let's start to look at what this start right now is actually on paper in terms of the numbers. And then we started to bring in a calorie and a protein goal on MyFitnessPal and just started to build it from there. But that was like start simple, finish with accuracy, as opposed to trying to start with accuracy and not really having that buy-in that was needed.
Mm, mm. I think that's almost like the perfect segue into all this stuff. I think there can sometimes be a misconception where this preparation phase of getting someone ready to change, someone's going to change a hell of a lot still. Like this isn't necessarily going to be a period of time when nothing happens. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate like Lynn losing 80 pounds over 6 months. It wasn't all doing this stuff. Like as you said, he built things up over time. But we look at these areas we've been through so far. Like we've only been through 5 of these 8 sections. Like if we do correct these things in the initial weeks, the amount of body composition change going to come through is actually still going to be pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
huge. Yeah.
It's you're not going to have the client necessarily in a super boring situation of I'm just sitting there, mate, and nothing's happening. Like I'm looking the same every single week, and yes, I might feel a tiny bit better, but nothing's actually going on.
Yeah.
The person won't even necessarily realize this is what you're doing. Like you've not even really pulled the trigger yet. You're just getting them ready to change, but they've dropped X amount of body weight to start with.
Yeah.
So again, coaches don't fall into that headspace of I want to make sure that I actually get enough change out of this person to start with. I'm going to delay this. Like if you get this stuff right, they can actually be probably sometimes even more change than what they get as you actually start to push things further on down the line. Because if
Yeah.
something is so bad and then you make it significantly better across the board.
Yeah. I've actually, for the people that are watching this on YouTube, I've actually got a picture in a sec of an 8 week priming phase and before and after. And you can tell me whether there's been tangible fat loss there. And, at no point were they even actively following and chasing a deficit. It was just sorting a lot of things out. They were in a deficit by default of sorting it out, but at no point did we try and kind of push the body for fat loss. It just happens by default of changing those variables.
Mm. And
Um,
sometimes things don't need to be perfect. They just need to be less shit than what they were before.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that can be enough to see some significant change.
Yeah, and
Um,
the when you say less shit, this is perfectly aligned with 6 and 7, because when you look at digestion, the microbiome, gut health, hormones, metabolic health, so you look at like thyroid, sex hormones, testosterone. You look at um, you know the microbiome or digestive function, or intestinal permeability, leaky gut, whatever you might go down as a rabbit hole for a client. You don't need to look at any of that until you've addressed those first 5 points, until they're locked in with mindset and they're motivated, until they've got habit optimization, until they've got that support system and environment locked in, until they've addressed their sleep and stress management, until they've addressed their nutritional quality, their calorie awareness, and adding in some basic supplementation. If you address those 5 things to start with, the chances are you're having massive positive change on their digestion, you're having massive positive change on their gut microbiome, and you're having massive positive change on where they're hormonally, because of their sleep improving, because of their stress management. So instead of us looking at, right, the reason why you can't change is because you've got gut dysfunction and you've got low testosterone, that jumps forwards 5 steps, because the reason why they've got those things occurring in the first place is because the first 5 things, particularly 4 and 5, are really poor. They're really compromised. Whereas if you can adjust those daily habits and practices, the chances are you'll find huge positive change on 6 and 7 there. And we're all going to have clients that you lock everything else in and it just still doesn't click. You're all going to have clients sometimes that you lock everything else in and there's clearly an apparent issue there where you might have to refer out. You might have to delve deeper with a stool analysis or a Dutch test or blood work, whatever it might be. But I'd say confidently 99% of people that come through the door, if you can nail the first 5 things there, you're going to get a solid result. And 6 and 7 won't even come into play if you can manage the bigger picture.
It's like the Luke Lehman quote, which I'm probably going to slightly butcher, but it's like, I think that was a similar thing. Like, it's 90% of clients just want to get a good night's sleep and have a solid shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are, I think people are so used to feeling terrible that it becomes normal,
Yeah.
aren't they? Like, and they don't realize how good they could feel until they actually get there. But yeah, but you're not going to do it, especially with things like digestive function. You're not going to do it by, again, same with sleep, like going to the nth degree. You just allow that to get better because everything else has got better in the first place.
Yeah.
And then great. I think, again, I can confidently say I've been guilty of doing this the opposite way, of actually being like, oh, you know what this person's issue is? It's they've got leaky gut. I'm going to give them some
Yeah.
glutamine.
Yeah.
I'm going to fix it. And then I've forgotten that everything else they're doing in their life
Yeah.
is horrifically bad. And I've been like, yeah, but 10 grams of glutamine in the mornings, that's going to fix it.
Yeah.
Like,
I think you've got an issue with gut permeability, Sarah. What did you have for
do you know
breakfast?
what
I had
SIBO
a
stands for?
had a McDonald's and a Starbucks latte with 300 milliliters of whipped cream. It's like, maybe that might be the area to adjust first.
It's like that picture of that big like plastic thing of water and that thing of
Yeah.
like slapping a plaster onto
Yeah. Yeah.
it. That's you coming in there with your X amount of supplementation and being like, there you go,
Yeah.
sorted. And then
Good to
everyone just
go.
goes, and just
Good to go.
completely drops off.
And the last point there, ironically, is training execution and exercise quality, because in that first phase of coaching for a lot of those clients, even if you've got clients that are advanced and they're going through kind of hypertrophy related outcomes, that hypertrophy related outcome is still going to be underpinned by the ability to manage body composition and everything else. So training execution and exercise quality, particularly for Gem Pop clients, particularly for beginner clients, you're going to get most of the change from the other points, and then training is just kind of a sprinkling on the top, and then you can build that over time and nurture that as you move deeper into the process. But the initial buy-in and the initial change is going to come from the bigger picture. Like I said, with that client, Lynn, and I think she lost 30 or 40 pounds before we even started to look at training as a variable. She was just doing a step goal and moving more at the start. But for more advanced clients, the same premise goes of training is always going to be an integral part of that. How you train, the program design, the execution, the quality of each rep, each set is always going to be a big part. But in the grand scheme, when you're looking at a transformation, it actually plays less of a part than you think when the other things are compromised. You've got to get those up to scratch first before you can really go nitty gritty with the training side.
Mm. Good, because I think training is the exception to the rule out of these, where to a certain extent everything works.
Yeah.
Like not to massively oversimplify training because there's obviously way more nuance that we'll go into later on. But if someone is training consistently, training hard enough, and they're not being an idiot and they're not injuring themselves, like the difference between someone being okay and good isn't actually as great as it's going to be for the majority of these other areas.
Mm,
And as I said earlier, like I think especially because for a lot of people when they actually start with you, training is probably the thing they prioritize the most.
yeah.
Whether it is someone who's slightly more advanced and they can't stay at the gym, they just that's what gets them going and that's the main passion about this stuff, but everything else falls behind a little bit. Or even someone who's a little bit newer to it, who's kind of maybe had a PT in the past, they've trained with someone else, or they've looked into it a little bit more and they've kind of had to play about with stuff, or even they got like a sporting background, whatever it could be. Like that's normally going to be put at a slightly higher level. So you don't have to go at that as number one. There's no point, as it having the perfect programming, but everything else being absolutely god awful because they're not really going to see anything. There's not really going to be a massive change, but fix one of these other areas first, bang, and they're off.
Yeah. Can you hear my washing machine in the background?
No,
Okay.
you got that?
Sounds like
Is
there's a
it? Is
helicopter
it?
landing on my roof.
Have you put 6 pairs of shoes in there just to test out your new mic? You've ruined your own
I,
ASMR
th-
video. That's what it is.
I
That's what you've
think
done.
hopefully the mic is pulling through and you can't hear that because it sounds like there's a Chinook landing on the roof of my office. But um,
I also love how you called that my washing machine when we
well,
we both know you have not put a load of washing on
I didn't
for
load it, but it's
a good
technically
long
next to my
time.
office. So
It's in the house that I own, so it still
yeah.
counts.
But yeah, it's a little bit of a breakdown there in terms of uh, key concepts. I think will be valuable, and regardless of the client level and the client goal and the caliber of the client, like straight from simple, basic gym pop walking through the gym door, never been in the gym before, even to advanced, I think a lot of those things are applicable to both parties there. And even from my perspective, even with prep coaching, even with coaching low and high level athletes, like a lot of this stuff, it's the same stuff when you start that process. It's just on different levels of focus relative to where the individual's at, and you're meeting them at where they're at. But yeah, it's a really valuable one to go through, and I think that for us is you fail at doing this, and the chances are the transformation is probably going to fail at some point at the same time. But like when I said before, in terms of like visual change, like anyone that's watching this on YouTube now, like this is Aid. I coached him a few years ago. He did a photo shoot transformation. I'll try and find where's the picture of the before and after? I can't remember. But he did a photo shoot transformation there, and his before and after was, I might be able to find it somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. There he is on the left hand side.
I love seeing a race trick presentation, by the way, where it's just memes.
Just memes the
Traffic
whole
lights.
time. But
Traffic light
yeah,
meme.
just traffic lights for everything you can possibly think of. Yeah, like that was pretty much not really trying to chase fat loss. It just happened by default of managing energy balance and not really stressing his body out. But like there's a massive amount of visual change there with fat mass distribution, how much is pulled off, and obviously he's a lot less inflamed in that right picture. But just gives you an idea of how much physical change can happen as well. Psychological change massively, but physical change to really get them bought in at the start if you can nail those first few steps.
Hmm. Man, that's mad to be there. And I think he's just gone from puffy, inflamed,
Exactly. Yeah.
unhealthy and again, that's difference you see visually from that is insane.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
anyone goes away and like on holiday or after Christmas and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm carrying a little bit here for a handful of days. You lose that
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, this is how it should be.
I'm sound. Yeah.
Um, Great
Yeah.
lid as well. Shout out to his hair
Great
in
lid.
that photo.
Great lid.
Did you electrocute him midway through his session?
Yeah, I
Live
did.
by where his
Yeah,
hair's going.
I did.
That's the secret way. I
Um,
told mate, I want to see a picture of Lynn. Have you got Lynn 80 pounds down?
I will have done it. It's M10. It was literally like 7 years ago. M10. And she
Get
might
back to the garden now.
if she's watching this, she might actually kill me if I show it as well.
I like how you've optimistically said they'll be watching this. We're going viral after
'Cause I remember the
two
first time I
podcasts.
posted the results when we're at M10, we used to get like a transformation bonus if you got a result posted on the page. And I remember when we posted it, I asked her for like clearance. I said, "Are you sure you're happy with me posting this?" And I was like, I can edit it and not show your face if you want to stay confidential for work and stuff." And she was like, "Nah, you can post it." And then I posted it, and she rang me straight away, and she's like, "Why did you post it?" And I was like, "You told me to post it."
Just had
And then she was like, "Yeah,
PTSD ever since.
it is pretty impressive." So I was like, "Yeah, fucking hell, it's 80 pounds worth of body weight. It is pretty impressive, yeah."
It's genuine PTSD since every single client since. Can I use your photos?
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no, really. Please, can I use your photos?
yeah.
Please don't egg my
If you
house.
sign here, you are allowing me to use your photos.
Do you
Um,
remember? Do you remember when it must have been when GDPR changed? Because we had to change that. I was at UP at the time still.
yeah.
We had to get a picture of people with a sign saying opt in.
Oh,
We couldn't
really?
just sign it. Yeah, we had to suddenly like flicking a switch. We suddenly had to like go to like crazy levels of people to prove that they'd said yes to it. And we were the
Mm,
same thing. Like we had like an internal leaderboard, and the people who got more transformations would move up the leaderboard, but these transformations had to be able to be used within marketing.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
if they weren't used, then they weren't useful for the business. So you got
yeah,
nothing for it.
yeah.
So you'd have, I remember to badger someone on holiday to hold up a piece of paper that said opt in because he'd
Jesus,
finished coaching and he'd gone away for a few weeks. And I was like, mate, I really need this. Just going to take a
yeah,
picture.
that's mad,
And
isn't
then
it?
bless him, like 2 days later, he just sent it through. And I was like,
Or
there you go.
you're
And then
doing
another.
you're doing a consultation. They say they don't want their picture shown, and you're like, "Well, I'm not going to coach you." There's the
I
door.
don't think we're a good fit. I don't think we're a
Yeah.
good fit. I'm going to get you reallocated to someone else that I don't like. Thanks.
uh,
We should do one of these, mate, where we just tell stories. Last
yeah,
last 10 years
I
of our
know.
careers, like weird stuff that happened, but we can drop them in over the next few.
There's enough of them. There's enough
Yeah,
of them.
unfortunately. Um,
Um,
no, I think that was a perfect part one though. I think that was because this, as I said, this is step one of coaching,
yeah,
and I said this is the kind of thing where if you nail this, then you separate yourself from the crowd with coaching at the moment. You
yeah,
become that person that's able to make significant change, and from just doing some simple bits.
yeah,
I think with episode 2, it could be worth going into practical examples of how to do this as well. I think that could be quite interesting to go into. So as I said, kind of assessing from consultation forms the things that you need to go into first, and then so kind of mapping out how we'd actually put that into practice.
yeah,
Because that's the kind of next logical step after what we've been through there.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, should we throw out a little discount code for episode 1,
Oh, love that. Let's give George some more work to do.
George? We're going to do a discount of 20% off all subscription packages with the code podcast. So if you're listening to this and you've listened to the end, congratulations, you just entered the ability to do this. But if you use the word podcast or one word, you can get a 20% discount on coaching education through our full syllabus at the ICM. To find us, you can hit us on the website www.theicmeducation.com, and you can follow us on, I believe, the ICM. What's the Instagram? Is it ICM underscore education?
No, it's all one word, just the ICM education
The ICM
is
education.
what we are. And that also has a link to the website as well.
Yeah.
And we'll put that discount code for all packages as well. So
Yeah.
anyone who's currently not a member, we have 3 options. We either have a paid monthly option, a 6-month access, and a 12 months access as well.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to sign up for a slightly longer period of time, they can get that same 20% discount as well.
Indeed. What have we got coming up on the website? So January, we've obviously got the next launch, I think.
Yes, we have. We've got, to be fair, we've got a lot of stuff coming in January as well, which is very exciting. So all our foundational content is now up. We've obviously drip fed that intentionally over the last few months. We've got some more advanced sections coming into transformations actually. So looking at more specific programming for male clients, female clients, at different kind of levels within their coaching journey. We have some extra bits coming to foundation and especially strengthening the PT side of things. We've got female physiology being added to. We've got hypertrophy being added to. We've got another whole module being added as well between yourself and Ross. So it's gonna be our biggest drop yet in general. It's gonna be
I've got a
huge.
list. So we've got 4, 8, 12, 18, 22, 20. It's got 32 videos to drop in January. So we've basically got female physiology advanced section being started with PCOS, menopause, birth control, and amenorrhea management. We've got 4 new videos being added to the hypertrophy section, which is the start of the advanced section in the hypertrophy section. We've got 10 videos being added to coaching foundations, which I believe is PT orientated for that. We have 4 new videos being added for the advanced section on nutrition. We've got 4 new videos added, which are case study based for the advanced transformations and photo shoot preps. And we have 4 videos which are hosted by Pro Coach, which will be me and Ross coming in and starting a Foundations of Prep coaching module, which is also a new module to start in January as well. So yeah, 32 lecture videos being added in January. And yeah, like so far right now in terms of the build for the foundation modules, we have a lot of content in coaching foundations. We have sleep mastery, we have foundations in female physiology, which is basically an introduction into the menstrual cycle and female hormone physiology. We've got brand building and business management by our guest educator, I believe Ben Hawksworth, coach consultant. We have achieving transformations with GenPop clients. We have achieving transformations and advanced transformation of photo shoot prep. We have nutritional fundamentals. We've got blood work management with Dr. Dean. We have understanding the digestive system and GI. We've got total mental performance. Kieran talking through his own module on psychology and around mental performance, and both coach and client based. We've got applied hypertrophy. We've got anatomy and exercise mechanics, which deep dive with James and Paul from the PT project over exercise mechanics and the ins and outs of client anatomy. We've got financial mastery with Fit Pro finances. And we've also got obviously the live calls, which happen twice a month. I believe the next one is 25th with me.
And the next one is actually 18th. We've got
18th, and then I'm the one after.
We've got you and I both presenting. So we've got long-term coaching strategies next Monday, and then yours the Monday after.
Sweet. So the group calls are a cool one in terms of engagement and getting on and asking live questions to us happen twice a month. But if you can't make the group calls, you can watch them back. And we also have a community page forum that you can basically just go in and ask us anything you want on the topics or another client situation or piece of education you want to follow up on. If you want to query any of us or answer anything, ask anything, we can get back to you on there. So yeah, pretty conclusive.
I think we need to top up the total amount of hours of content. There's well over 100 hours of content on there now.
Yeah, for sure.
Only 2 people have actually got to the end.
Yeah. Of everyone on there, really?
Everything. Yeah. And we've had significantly more than 2 people sign up. So, yeah, only 2 people have actually got to the finish so far.
Yeah.
It's wild. And yeah, that's 32 lectures, probably at least another 20, 25 hours as well. So, and we've got the app coming actually as well in January. So we've got everything coming well. And so 2025 is going to be a good year. We've got some guests actually being lined up as well.
Yes.
Which is very exciting. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. So yeah, anyone who's actually stuck with us to the end of this one, they've got to jump on everyone else.
So at the moment, there is currently a 1.4% completion rate of all of the content. So there is pretty conclusive. It's pretty there's a lot on there at the moment. Sweet. All right. Anything else?
No, I think we are all good there. We can record our next one in 10 months. And then we can get going at a good rate of upload.
I'm going to get you to upload the audio version of this, and I'm going to upload the one on. Actually, no. We got video and audio. Yeah, we'll sort it in a sec.
Yeah, and it'll be on Spotify, podcasts, YouTube for anyone who wants to watch the visuals.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say how often we're going to put these out, but they're going to be much more regular than that for you as well.
I think a good target would be twice a month. I think. Twice a month is a good target. If we can get more in, or maybe guest episodes, that would be extra bonus things, then we'll do that as well. But we're going to try and make each one to the point in terms of like there's educational content that's a little bit more formal, so you can get a lot of value from it. So whether you're driving in your car somewhere, or whether you're sitting down doing some work, having that on in the background. With a visual cue as well, I think will be really helpful. So just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what you could expect on some of the modules on the ICM.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sweet. All right. Thanks for
listening.
listening.
Thank you for listening, guys.
Is it nearly your bedtime yet?
It is 10 past 10, so it's gone bedtime for me. It's time for dinner and bedtime, and George finishes soon. So
yeah,
a nice easy evening out here in Melbourne, mate.
Lovely. Right. Thanks for listening, guys. We will
Awesome.
catch you on the next one.
Take care, guys. See you soon.